Wow, we have a big echo. My name is Michael Edgar. I'm with SelectChicago, and today is our April 14th FDI Workshop Series. Today we are live in Elk Grove Village, and we're going to be learning about the history of the Elk Grove Industrial Park. With us today we have Josh Grosden. He's economic developer with the city of Elk Grove Village, or the village of Elk Grove Village, and Kevin Brennan with Brennan Investment Group. And they're going to be talking today about this program, and we're in this wonderful building today. And I'm looking forward to hearing about what they bring to bear with this area. And after this session, we're going to be talking about the Philippines, and we're really excited about the programs to hear about two different companies that have been investing in the Philippines in a big way. And then we'll be wrapping up with a Filipino company that's the McDonald's of the Philippines that's rolling out nationally in the United States, as well as we'll finish it up with Sitka, Ginta Rubin from Sitka, and I talking about how SelectChicago helps businesses as a one-stop shop to have a soft landing in the greater Chicago region. I'm going to turn this over to Josh, and away we go.
Thank you, Michael. Welcome to Elk Grove Village. Like Michael said, I'm Josh Grosden. I'm the Economic Development Director for Elk Grove Village. Just give you a little background on Elk Grove Village. It's about population of about 33,000 people, just about 25 miles west of downtown Chicago, just on the other side of O'Hare Airport. And believe it or not, Elk Grove Village, half of the village, about 6 square miles of Elk Grove Village, is our industrial park. And it's actually the largest industrial park in the United States with 62 million square feet of space. So it's quite large, it's quite diverse. I've been with the village for about 10 years, but the park was first developed back in the late 1950s. Around 1958 is when they started developing this industrial park. And it's really gone through a lot of different iterations. You know, in the early days, it was the tool and die capital of the world. A lot of small manufacturing, mom and pop job shops. That later evolved along with the area as the interstates and the rail system to being a real distribution hub, you know, more in the 70s and 80s, and still retaining a lot of its manufacturing base. And then fast forward to, you know, the late 90s, early 2000s, it's become much more high tech. And one of our biggest members of our business community are data centers, you know, these cloud computing buildings. So it's really gone through, you know, quite a metamorphosis over its history, and we're really, you know, excited here to be sitting inside one of the buildings at the Elk Grove Technology Park with Kevin. And I'll let Kevin tell you a little bit about this development, because it's really kind of like the crown jewel of the industrial park after decades and decades of like I said, different industries coming and going, and now we have this amazing, you know, development that I'll let Kevin talk about. I don't want to steal his thunder.
Thanks, Josh, and thanks, Michael. Yeah, so the Elk Grove Technology Park, where we're sitting today, we're in one of our 4 buildings that we constructed just about a year ago. The project, though, at this property started well before then. As Josh knows, we looked at acquiring this site for a speculative development, meaning we were going to build vacant buildings and try to attract high-quality tenants. And we secured about a 68-acre farm that was unincorporated within Elk Grove Village, but was not part of the village. We worked closely with the village in annexing this property into their village, along with a handful of other properties that surrounded it. So all told, I think it was an assemblage of about 10 or 11 properties, which totals about 85 acres. We decided to, well, first and foremost, we're based here in Chicago. Brennan Investment Group is a privately held industrial developer and owner. We operate in 33 different states throughout the country. We own and manage about 45 million square feet, so we're pretty diverse in the United States on the industrial side. And Elk Grove Village is among the handful of cities that we deem the highest quality in terms of where we can attract tenants to our buildings and where therefore we want to own and build. So prior to developing the Elk Grove Technology Park, we have owned a number of buildings in Elk Grove that have been great. Some were manufacturing buildings, some distribution, some in between. So when we decided to develop here in Elk Grove, we came here because of some of the things Josh talked about: labor, transportation, the intersecting interstates that connect you throughout the state and get you close to the city of Chicago. Those primarily are the big drivers. And a lot of the other infrastructure qualities that Elk Grove has. The data centers just being an example. What's important to them is access to a lot of power very quickly, along with a diverse fiber optic cable roadway, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so for all those reasons, we were attracted to the park. We built the 4 buildings. We decided to build them to what we call a build-to-suit quality standard, so very high-end facades, beautiful landscaping. I wish we could walk around today. It's beautiful, but inside, we're trying to attract high-quality tenants that want to be here for a long time. And so we're excited. We've welcomed a number of tenants already, all based in different parts of the world, so, and all who've committed long-term and have made this their headquarters.
Yeah, it's interesting because the tenants that you have been able to, recruit to move here, and really, it happened fairly quickly when you think about it. I mean, I talk to a lot of real estate professionals, and they might work with a company, 6 months, a year and a half before they actually close a deal. You guys really filled this up pretty quickly by industry standards, and it's a diverse mix of companies. It's manufacturing, it's a data center, it's Cosentino, which is more of a distribution of building materials.
Yep.
So it's really a diverse kind of mix you have here. Were you surprised on how quickly you filled the spaces, or were you just so spot on with your market analysis that you knew this was going to be a kind of not a slam dunk, but definitely a success?
That's a great question. I mean, we felt that we had the wind at our back. I think getting through the entitlement process, which working with the village was as smooth as an entitlement process can be, quite honestly. So once we got through that process and were able to build buildings, we were building in a mature market. Josh, I think you said 62 million square feet just in Elk Grove. There's other parts of the O'Hare submarket that would add another 80 million square feet to that. Right. So this submarket we sit in is very large, and so it's large because of the transportation aspect, the labor aspect, and all the things we talked about. Why I wasn't surprised about getting the activity here that we got was because we built something different than what we've frankly built ourselves throughout the U.S., but also different than whatever our competitors have built. We went for a very high-end look. Did not compromise functionality, however. So we were able to both accommodate the traditional distribution companies that are our customers throughout the U.S., but also be able to attract the higher-end companies that we now have that are more manufacturing oriented, mm-hmm. that utilize robotics and automation in their business, which many are today, and those that were looking for something special in this community. You mentioned the age of some of the properties throughout your community. This was an opportunity to, at a big scale, be able to develop a park that had amenities like walking paths, water features, retail areas, hotel areas, and still have the functionality that a standard industrial building would have. So, yeah, in a way, it was easy to attract the tenants. Not that easy, but we were pleased with everybody that's here and who's coming, and we have a few more that are on their way. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said that you had the wind to your back, because the industrial market, ever since I started here with the village, over 10 years ago, has been every year just doing better and better and better. I think when I started here, our vacancy rate was over 13%. Wow. It's been as low as I think under 3% just a year or so ago, and it ended 2020 lower than it was in 2019. So there's definitely a strong breeze.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because your predecessors, the Centex Corporation, that actually started this park, it was called originally the Centex Industrial Park. They were pretty clever, because the way they laid it out with the rail, the roads, the buildings, railroad buildings, mm-hmm. it really brought a unique functionality to Elk Grove Village, where We have, I think, over 20 miles of freight rail tracks. We're served by every major interstate that goes out to the country, that comes into Chicagoland. Obviously, we have O'Hare International Airport.
Right.
So the infrastructure amenities and the fiber you mentioned, we have, if you had X-ray vision and you could look underground, you would see an incredible network of fiber that stretches pretty much down every major street in the industrial park.
Yeah.
So we have this incredible infrastructure. And what I like to tell businesses when they talk to me about moving here and they have some trepidation, about certain things, I tell them, look, you can move into this building, this environment, and because we have such a robust supply chain of diverse companies, you're up and running operational day one. You don't have to create that supply chain. You don't have to create that infrastructure network, the fiber, the roads, the rail, the customer base. It's already here. It's turnkey.
Right.
So really, you could move in day one into a building like this, and you could be up and running the next day, doing business.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure you probably repeat that same message.
Yeah, I think what you said about Centex and at the time, all those things are really important. What we try to at least stay, maybe we try to get ahead of, but at least stay with, is technology and what the tenant wants. And there's things that evolve every year. Clear heights tend to go up, dock counts tend to get greater, parking needs are increasing. So there's always an evolution, there always will be in any development. But one of a few of the things that will always remain constant and necessary are people to either consume your products or businesses where you can work with. So there's the business to consumer element of having a lot of people around, and then there's the business to business element, like you said, that's sort of supply chain within Elk Grove. And those things, and along with the infrastructure that we've talked about, those are things that you can't replicate.
Right.
Fortunately, we were able to also deliver a product here that had all the modern physical functionality and characteristics that would really, I think, cement a lot of the decisions from some of the companies here.
Yeah, and we should probably mention where exactly we are, because you can see, we can see out the window Higgins Road. So we're really at the intersection of basically Higgins to the north, Oakton Street to the south, pretty much Lively Boulevard to the east, and not so close, but Arlington Heights Road to the north. Those are the rough boundaries, and we're right off of I-90.
Yep.
I mean, there's a full interchange at I-90, so you can get off at I-90 and be here in literally seconds.
Yeah, no, and that was key to us. So we have to work our way down when we make decisions in development. First is where we want to build, and then how do we want to build it. And the building that we're sitting in, we think has all the amenities that a tenant would want. We can cut it up into smaller units, keep it large, whatever the tenant requires. But then in addition to that, with laying out the park, there was a lot of things in order to differentiate ourselves and attract a high-end user, which we've been successful in doing. The amenities within the park, both for their employees, like the walking paths, the fountains, the things that we had added to the park, but also just the ingress and egress, and trying to create multiple points for the employees of a tenant and in the trucks and everybody else to go in and out without making it too claustrophobic. And so we have, I think, 7 or 8 different ways to get into the park. And again, these are modern things that evolve. 20, 30 years ago, that wasn't necessarily as important.
Right.
And everything sort of changes over time. So yeah, that's right.
Well, what I've noticed is that while you have this master plan development, 85 acres that's laid out with the beautiful landscaping and walking paths, that 85 acres sits within this larger industrial park where the buildings are of a vintage, 1970s, 80s buildings. So development's probably a little more challenging in the rest of the industrial park. I know you guys do a lot of work, obviously outside of the tech park. So what are you seeing in the greater O'Hare, greater Elk Grove area? Are you seeing a lot of like tear down, rebuilds, spec, build to suits?
Yes.
Other than this beautiful crown jewel, what else is happening?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was unique about this site was the fact that there wasn't a building or a set of buildings on it before we bought it. There were, actually.
And one landowner.
And one land, it evolved. But
2 or 3.
It started with one and evolved.
That's better than 25 or 100.
But because of the, would describe as infill nature. So basically that just means land constrained. There's really virtually no greenfield land available in Elk Grove. Right. And so in order to develop a building like this in the town, to assemble 10 acres, let's say, typically you're acquiring multiple properties from multiple owners. And a lot of folks like ourselves are doing that and continue to do that. And so it's a grind to try to build a 150 and 150,000 square foot building in the market. So when we had the opportunity to have 85 acres contiguous, that allowed us to build up to 1.2 million square feet in one pocket, that was obviously very unique. And also allowed us the room within the park to create the amenities, right? So a lot of and we've done a lot of tear downs ourselves, and generally you're tearing it down and you're within an older segment of the market, which works very well. This is a little bit different because it's not, but yes. So in its spec development, it's build to suits, it's data centers too, Josh. I'd say you're seeing a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as I go around talking to companies, we're trying to keep what we have. We're trying to retain the businesses and help them grow. So they need more product, and we're also working with businesses that want to move here. So we need more product for them as well. I think. I read a lot of these real estate reports, and it's the demand for industrial is so high, it's outpacing the supply. So I think it's so important, and I think Elk Grove does this fairly well. Elk Grove works well with, I think, the real estate community, with folks like yourselves, because it's a real partnership. Yeah. And we have to make sure that, well, you want to build a quality building that's going to attract a tenant, it's going to be the right size, the right configuration. The village obviously has to be aware of setbacks and stormwater and parking and all that stuff. But I think we work pretty well together in the village and the real estate community to make these buildings a reality and help companies expand and help companies find new space. So I think that's important, that you have a good relationship with the village.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this park in particular, again, this was a pretty high profile development, and it required getting annexed into the village. And so we had to collaborate very closely with Elk Grove. And work together on what setbacks made sense and some of the other requirements. And so, yeah, that was a big part of it, but it was smooth. It's an organized. Elk Grove's very organized. It's very, I'd say, linear in the sense that what I hear from you is what I hear from everybody, and that's a good thing, and not altogether consistent everywhere else we've done business. So yeah, absolutely, it's been good to work with Elk Grove Village here, especially a project that takes this much effort from everybody: village, developer, the brokerage community, the tenant community, the community within Elk Grove as well. A lot of neighbors here that live close by. So,
well, what's great also is that you build a development like this, and there are opportunities that this creates in the surrounding neighborhood for business development. For example, just across the street, this is a great story. There's a company in Elk Grove Village. It's been here for many, many years. They manufacture large machines that do cartoning, cereal, anything you need to put in a box, they put in a box. And they're kind of on their second generation, ownership-wise. The son's taking over for the dad, I believe. But the son, who has a manufacturing facility, I think it's on, I don't want to say because I don't want to get it wrong, but it's in the heart of the industrial park. He drives by here every day on his way to work. And what he did is he bought one of those strip centers across the street from you guys. Directly, you can see it out that window. Yeah. That one right there. Yeah. And he re-facaded it. He redid the whole parking lot because he saw the investment you guys were making. And I talked to him and said, yeah, there's going to be some high-level companies moving in here. He's like, I'm going to buy that little strip center, fix up, put a restaurant in there, put maybe a microbrewery, whatever that caters more to the workforce here. So that residual development is great for the village. And if anyone's looking to kind of piggyback on what you guys are doing, that's a great story because it's not just this development, it affects the whole neighborhood. Yeah. It brings up the whole neighborhood.
I agree, and that's the fun part of doing development, is seeing some of those residual benefits that you don't see on a Excel page. Yeah. And so we've certainly seen that. When we first started to develop the project, I mean, we didn't really focus on the data center business as much either, and we'd come to learn a lot about that. And with Microsoft taking
talk a little bit about Microsoft.
yeah, so Microsoft, again, it was 85 acres. Microsoft bought 40 acres from us to develop for themselves their own data center campus. And when a company like that establishes a flag in the ground here, that says a lot. I think obviously it's an important element, and the reason for it is, again, working with the village. It was a lot of discussions that had to take place to get that done. Working with us, but the park feel, the community, the fiber, the power, all of those things played a huge role. And so we were thrilled when Microsoft came to town and said we'd love to own here, not just lease, but own here for the long haul. And they're putting, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of their own capital into these facilities. And then T5 is just to the south of us here. They're a data center developer who also saw the vision here as well, bought a building similar to the one we're sitting in, and completely repurposed it for a data center use. Them as well, they put in, I think, hundreds of millions just in that facility. So you have this diverse demand here that's unique to Elk Grove, by the way. We develop all across the country. Not every market or community has the diversity of demand that Elk Grove has, quite honestly. Manufacturers, distribution companies, domestic, international, data centers, a lot of headquarter facilities here because of the proximity to the airport. And I think a lot of that's, was almost an easy decision for us to develop here.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the industrial demand that you cited before is a culmination of a few things. I think it's the ever-present e-commerce business that we're all familiar with personally and professionally. Manufacturing having a resurgence in the United States. People, wanting to create here rather than rely on, international supply chain. And then the desire and demand from the cloud computing industry, which is driving data centers. And all of those folks are absorbing industrial, which is why you're seeing these historically low vacancy rates in the 1%, 2%, 3% range.
And that's happening all throughout the Chicago industrial market.
It's happening throughout the United States.
Throughout the United States,
but
yeah.
we're seeing a lot of that diversity, though, in Chicago. So some markets, it's really low vacancy, but it's all e-commerce.
Right.
Some of it's really low vacancy, it's all manufacturing.
Right.
Chicago, and particularly the O'Hare area, is firing on all three cylinders.
Yeah. And that is amazing because, I've talked to a lot of people in industrial real estate development, and they say, when I was younger and I was getting into the industrial development or real estate world, it wasn't as glamorous. All my friends were going into office and retail, and now look who's on the top.
Well, it's
like the new retail.
It's definitely evolving.
It's definitely evolved. Yeah.
The sophistication of tenancy has evolved. The folks that are invested in this space has evolved as well. And again, it's because of those demand drivers. It's e-commerce, it's manufacturing, data centers. Those are the three drivers today that we don't see slowing down, and that's what's really driving the interest from the landlords.
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. Here in Elk Grove Village, are you familiar with Northwest Point? It's more of our Northwest Point is more of a Class A office park. That's how it was developed. It was, your typical suburban office park, a lot of parking, a lot of water features. It wasn't an industrial area. It was designed for office users, in hotels. And over the years, it's done well, but no one was really building Class A office space anymore. So there were a lot of places in the Northwest Point that were not developed. And when industrial started to really take off, and a lot of companies that are high-end, once again, foreign companies like Japanese machine builders like Yamazin and MC Machinery, when they were looking for new corporate headquarters off of 90, they approached the village about Northwest Point, and instead of saying, "Hey, no, this is not an industrial manufacturing setting. This is an office park," we worked with them, and we said, "Okay, well, you want to be here. We want you to be here. No one's going to build a new hotel or a Class A office space here. Let's talk about your development." And they came through with these corporate offices that are beautifully architecture is beautiful, the facades are beautiful, their showrooms, their call centers, they employ a lot of people, but it's not traditional manufacturing. It's
Right.
not like they're processing anything. So we reinterpreted our zoning code for Northwest Point, where now we have like Amazon, MC Machinery, that built these beautiful North American headquarters.
Yeah.
So Elk Grove was very flexible with the business community, because we kind of have this attitude like, let's work with what the economy is giving us and make it the best, instead of saying, no, we don't want that.
Yeah.
This is what we are. This is what we're always going to be. Okay, well, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You got to kind of be nimble and move with the industry, and what the economy is going to give you. You got to take
Right.
and make it the best you can.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I've seen it from you guys a lot. Elk Grove is. I think the nice thing is you have you have a lot of data to go off of, right? With all the square footage you have in the community, so you're able to see the trends and pivot and do things that are best for your community and that work for everybody. So, yeah, this again is a testament to that. This was not zoned for industrial. This was zoned for really agriculture.
It wasn't zoned for
and
anything.
was, for years and years and years, industrial was not something that was interesting, because at the time it wasn't at a level where it is today. But we worked with you guys and said we'd like to deliver the best in class, which I still stand behind. I think this is the nicest industrial park there is in the country. If it's not the nicest, it's within the top 5 for sure. So, but that took a lot of collaboration, working together to provide the amenities, the features, the aesthetics that without compromising function. So, but that was working with the village and really a collaborative effort. So.
Yeah, and the mayor of Elk Grove Village, Mayor Craig Johnson, he's very hands-on with development. I mean, I think he grew up riding his bike through this field, so he's familiar with this, and a lot of people brought ideas to him, and yours really captured his attention. People were like, we could build a 300,000 square foot truck court, or that's not what he wanted.
Yeah.
He wanted something of this high quality. But in general, what's interesting in the industrial park, I see a lot of times, because the industrial sector is doing so well and the companies are doing well, over time, a lot of these companies have bought 2 or 3 buildings in the industrial park, and now they're trying to consolidate.
Yeah.
And then the trend is like, we need to be more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, can we get into one building? Can we connect our buildings? Which now you're looking at, you're kind of beyond the low-hanging fruit, tear down, rebuild, kind of one-off sites. You're getting into these situations where you're trying to connect 2 buildings that were never designed to be connected.
Yeah.
The lots aren't big enough because the stormwater rule, regulations are more extreme nowadays. So like, when you're working with your clientele and they come to you with these kind of, I'm sure I get all these questions all the time, crazy problems. Can I connect this building? Can I put underground stormwater? Can I, build on my parking lot?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be more creative as a developer, especially in this market where it's just so in demand right now. How do you approach those clients?
Yeah, well, it depends. It's case by case, but we have a big division within Brennan, the Corporate Real Estate Solutions group, that focuses on trying to provide those solutions, and each case is unique. So in a market like this, to take kind of a hypothetical example, to do what you said, where you're expanding a building or trying to consolidate from multiple buildings to one. It's difficult because vacancy is so low. There's really not a lot of options. So in today's market, you got to get really creative in terms of redeveloping what you have. Consolidating out of a couple of buildings, moving into a new one, building one for yourself. Brennan has done a few projects throughout the U.S. where we've taken situations like that, where a tenant's in 5, 6, 7 different buildings. They want to go into one. We've done a build to suit for that client, and we've bought the 6 buildings that they owned and are leaving vacant, and then we repurpose it, and that's a solution that we can work with, because we're developers, but we're also acquirers, owners, redevelopers of industrial. So it takes that diversity and way to look at a problem and try to solve it. A lot of the tenants that have moved here have been consolidating stories. Those that were in 30,000, now they need 60, now they need 100. And this is a solution for them to get more square footage, but also get more cubic footage as well, because of the ceiling heights here and functionality. So, but it's a challenge sometimes. In a lot of the redevelopment cases, as you know, in Elk Grove and other cities, it requires that collaboration though with the village to understand what the end game is and why we may have to do certain things differently. Yeah.
So, I mean, you guys do work all over the country.
Yeah.
So if you had a company that came to you, whether it's a foreign-owned company or a company in the Chicago region, or, U.S.-based company, and they say to you, Kevin, we want to be either in Chicago, Atlanta, where else do you have developments? Florida?
We're Florida, Atlanta, Texas, Chicago, Carolinas, Denver, Salt Lake, California.
Okay, so you're everywhere.
We're everywhere.
You're everywhere, so you know the local market trends.
Yeah.
You know how the Chicago market stacks up. Since we're here to promote Chicagoland area, what do you tell them? How do you?
Yeah.
Because obviously they have to do what's right for their business. They're not going to go somewhere where they're going to fail.
Right.
You
It
don't wanna do
depends
that.
on the user, I'd say, Josh. I mean, it all depends. But I think a few trends that I've seen myself in other markets is, as development has picked up and land becomes more scarce, so too becomes infrastructure, utilities. So there's certain markets where you look and say, gee, there's land everywhere. I should just build here.
Right.
But you don't have gas, you don't have water, you don't have the infrastructure. Those are key elements to anything. Right. And so that's something that you're seeing a lot of throughout. It's nothing new, but you're seeing more of it as people look to branch out in different markets throughout the U.S. Population, again, people, where people are living and working is evolving. But Chicago's got such a large population base, which means there's consumers, there's employees. That's huge. So to just move somebody completely to one area because land's cheaper or because you can build somewhere, that's not that simple. So infrastructure and labor are 2 key elements to any business, especially in industrial. Generally speaking, you hear statistics that real estate is only 5% of the cost of doing business for a industrial user. Labor and transportation are key. So unless you can replicate the interstate systems, the rail systems, population, diverse labor, it's going to be hard to compete with Chicago. That being said, there's plenty of places throughout the United States where you can build and operate. And so it all depends. If you're a big box just distributor and you can go different places. If you're a manufacturer, you have to go other places. So I think Chicago, pound for pound, in terms of diversity it offers and those key infrastructure and labor, things I've discussed, I think you can't replicate that.
Yeah, that's for sure. And, as I talk to businesses, that's probably the hardest thing to get through to them, because when you first meet someone who's interested in locating in this area, the first thing they bring up is the Cook County taxes, or just the cost of doing business here. And I tell them, look, just what you said, you can't replicate this infrastructure and supply chain. You're going to be up day one,
right?
Hopefully profitable.
Right.
And the village does help. I mean, the village offers incentives, the 6B, which is a property tax abatement program. That is, that's a Cook County program. That's throughout Cook County. So whether you're in Elk Grove or Skokie or Arlington Heights or Lake Zurich, you can still, Lake Zurich's not in Cook County. Never mind. Well, Lake Zurich's a great place to go, but they're not in Cook County. We still love Lake Zurich. You can go there as well. But it's a 6B is a property tax abatement program throughout Cook County that lowers your property taxes by about 2/3.
Yeah.
So, the local municipalities have the ability to use that tool. I like to talk about with people at the village about building out our economic development toolbox. The 6Bs are, let's face it, it's our go-to arrow in that tool in that toolbox. So, but Elk Grove Village offers other things. We have online permitting. We have very quick plan review process. We have, I mentioned the 6B. We have myself and my colleague Nick Radcliffe, who are out talking to the business community and helping them access workforce development resources, help them make contact with whoever they need, information from. So we're kind of like the village ombudsman, answer man, which I think is important because a lot of these companies, I'm sure you deal with this, they might just move once in the history of their company.
Yeah.
And it's not like they have any expertise in relocating their business.
Right.
So just like you're their trusted resource for real estate, I can be their trusted resource for all things Elk Grove Village, all things in the process of moving. Because if we can cut down their permit review time, that's a savings. That goes right to the bottom line. So it's really, and I don't think people realize that a lot of these times when these companies are moving, they're kind of doing it in-house. They're not hiring a moving expert because they do it once or twice in the 100-year history of their company.
Yeah.
So they're probably a little nervous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, they need the guidance. You've been great. So.
Oh, a question.
Sure.
So building out the park, what was the timeline from when you started with assembly or acquiring to occupancy for the first phase? So as we were talking about permits, times, working with the city, it's not an overnight process.
No. Sometimes it can be quick. This was obviously a much larger scale development that required just more time. So when we bought the land, it took us about 2 years to get, once we first had it under contract to close, about 2 years. And it's not that it took 2 years to get through our due diligence and close. We wanted to make sure with the village that we had it right, that we had the plan ready to go the day we closed. That meant getting it annexed, getting it zoned for industrial, getting the 6B, and having all of the documentation so we all knew what we were going to build and what we were going to attract. So that process took about 2 years. We closed. The day we closed, we hit the ground running, and we developed in about a year, and then we're about a year done with construction. We're about 50% leased. We'll be about 75% leased shortly. And then that doesn't include the Microsoft transaction or T5. So really, all told, about a year after construction, we're probably about 80% absorbed and expect to be fully leased and occupied this year.
That's a good question because, people think things happen overnight. I remember, I think it was in June of, when did you close on the property? June of the summer of 2019?
I think it was 18. Or maybe it was 19,
I remember taking a week off in June, like a week vacation, and my last day, whatever that Friday was, this was still, a farm. There was houses, there were trees. I came back a week later, and the whole site was scraped. So maybe all the pre-work took years, but the actual construction happened very quickly.
Yeah, that's the part.
All of a sudden, there were walls up. These precast walls.
A lot of times you see the ribbon cutting and think that's kind of all it is, but it's there's a lot of work, and honestly, it's really it's a lot more efficient from our perspective to be working with a village like Elk Grove, to be able to just sit in the room and work through issues. Eyes wide open and collaborate.
Yeah,
and
you had a lot of meetings with the mayor and the village manager's team.
Yeah, this was a very important property for the village and for the mayor and for the community. So it was not unexpected to have those meetings and make sure that we all saw it the same way.
Right.
And I think the village gave us a ton of ideas for the park that I think just look great. So we're really excited. Like the elk, 30 elk, 30 bronze elk. So yeah.
About your elk.
The elk. So
he owns the elk.
We own the elk. So we have, as I mentioned, these beautiful water features along Higgins that at night illuminate, and it looks great, and it's a nice amenity for the tenants. As sort of an homage to the village and to leave something behind, we decided to scatter bronze elk throughout the ponds. We thought was kind of a cool artistic feature. So we found somebody, I believe in somewhere in the
Chicago?
no, it was outside of Chicago that made these cast elk. So it was an interesting search, but we found somebody who could give us 30 of them. So they're all throughout.
Yeah.
There's male, female, and
Little
ones. Yeah. So
Well, it's a good complement to the actual live elk we have
That's right.
at the corner of Higgins and Arlington Heights Road. There actually are real live elk that the Cook County Forest Preserve and take care of that live in the forest there. So
our insurance consultant advised against live elk. in
yeah,
the
that's
park
probably
here,
not a good
so,
idea.
Yeah.
It's funny though. I remember when you guys were under construction, and I was visiting your construction office, talking to your colleague Jack about different things, and you had all 30 elk, I think, in the warehouse.
Yeah.
It was kind of creepy to be in a room with all these giant elk staring at you.
Yeah, it was nice to be able to let them free and put them out
Yeah.
in the pond. So they're alive and well now.
Doesn't the owner Mike Brennan, have one of them? He has an elk in his office.
He has since returned the elk.
Oh, he has?
He kept one in there until we got our first lease, so that fortunately went
okay.
back into the park very fast. So.
Well, what do you see the future of industrial? I mean, it's. I mean, I don't predict anything because when I started here at the village, I think we had 2 data centers. Here we go talking about data centers again, but we had it's just a good indication of how things change. We had I think 2 data centers when I started here. I didn't even know what a data center was. And now we have, 12, 13, 14 of them. Microsoft is building a campus. It's over probably close to 2 million square feet of data centers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can never, I don't know, you can predict things like that, but I would imagine if you think about it, technology is just going to get better and better.
Yeah.
E-commerce is going to get bigger and bigger. Amazon's, Walmart's, these big distribution entities are just going to take over, and they're going to have somewhere for their data to go.
Yeah.
Everything is data.
Yeah.
What comes after data centers? Do they start getting smaller?
Yeah.
Like a phone?
I won't pretend to know much about data centers.
It's
I,
impossible.
right now, what I will say in all seriousness, though, is looking ahead in the next several years, 10 years. I mean, I think technology is going to be a key driver in the economy. We're seeing it everywhere. But let's focus on industrial real estate. I think we've seen an evolution of robotics and automation in warehouse buildings. And so I think we're seeing that continue to evolve. And we're seeing it everywhere, whether it's in Chicago or it's in Kansas or Louisiana, wherever we have product. Distributors are using it, manufacturers are using it, top Fortune 100 companies are using it, and mom and pops are using it. So that evolution I don't think is going to change, and that will help them to do more. E-commerce is obviously continues to grow and grow and grow, and the predictions from some of the research folks that we talk to a lot suggest the amount of demand coming for that type of stuff is mind-boggling, quite honestly, and will exceed the supply availability. The reshoring and manufacturing piece of it, I think, is also important, and I think that is going to absorb more space as well. And again, why is reshoring happening? I think there's a tightening divide in the cost of labor as robotics and automation replace some of that. And so the competitive advantage that overseas companies had is slowly going away, not to mention all the supply chain issues we were all familiar with recently. And then, I think the last one that's, or 2 more, the need for inventory and warehousing, given the supply chain sort of shocks we've seen recently, will also increased demand from the industrial base. And then the data center space, I don't think is going away. Every day we're seeing them go to a different market, taking more space, owning. So I think technology is at the foundation of all these things, but we see that manufacturing, e-commerce, and data centers are huge drivers of demand that we don't see going away.
Yeah. Well, I think the light timer just clicked off, so maybe that means we're getting close to the end. Do we have any questions? Okay. We have 5 more minutes, so we can keep talking about Elk Grove Village.
Well, one thing I would say, actually, is just why not talk about the lights? So,
Yeah.
So one of the evolutions you see in development is obviously efficiency. And so that was another thing we had to pay attention to here and what we pay attention to closely in other developments. And so here, just to talk about a few things, motion sensor lights obviously reduces utility costs. You can't see it if you're watching us today, but a lot of the clear story windows that we put in provide a lot of natural light as well to reduce that. We have a permeable paver parking area, which provides for environmentally friendly stormwater retention as well. We have a lot of solar paneled light features outside, so we're not, running up the bill, so to speak. And so every day we're trying to get a little bit better in the in that sort of environmental friendly development focus. So.
Yeah, and not to mention, we talked about fiber. Fiber, I think, goes around this whole development, but to bring the fiber to the building, didn't you partner with Comcast to do that?
We did, yeah.
To actually bring it into the facility so people have access to hopefully 5G in the future.
Yeah, no, they were great. They came in very early with us, and we're able to work together to get that in here. Yeah, so all the infrastructure we have, from the gas to the power, the storm sewer, everything is pretty much plug-in ready here. So that's the nice thing. We can pretty much have somebody occupy this space in 30 days, realistically. So.
Yeah, once they start, obviously this is a shell.
Right.
They've got to build out the space for their own use.
Right.
But that can go rather quickly.
Yeah, depends.
And that's something that you help the tenants with.
Absolutely.
It's not like you just, here the key is good luck. If a business wants to move to this area, you're their partner in building out their space.
Right.
And make sure they're
We do a lot of things, but we'll build it out turnkey for a tenant. We'll do that ourselves. Sometimes tenants want to control exactly what it is because it's their headquarters.
Yeah.
And so instead we'll provide an allowance. So there's everywhere in between as well.
Yeah. Well, I hear nothing but good things, from the businesses I talk to that are moving here, because a couple of businesses that are moving here are already in Elk Grove. They're just looking for a maybe more higher image or more space. And then obviously the companies that have moved here from outside, I've also interacted with at some level. And they're all, they love being here.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear it. We love having them.
Yeah, they're ecstatic about it. I don't know if there's any questions we have from the audience or from Michael.
I think some of the questions I'm going to walk up to here so we can hear me better. We've had this was a great session, so I'm going to grab the mic and then look at the camera, but wonderful session talking about Elk Grove Village. Definitely the Brennan Group and what you've been doing with development has been fantastic. You touched on reshoring a little bit, but also what I think some of the folks that we get is really hitting on, we talked about transportation and labor, but why everything is getting more dense, because you're building and building and building. The last thing you can do now is go up. But how far out do you see? Because behind Kevin, we have this kind of circular map about 150 kilometers from O'Hare Airport. And I'll ask Kevin, what do you think the prospects are for industrial development within that inner ring of 150 kilometers from O'Hare Airport?
Well, we actually, in some of the big stars, Milwaukee, Madison, Rockford, and South Bend, we actually own properties in each of those cities. So, I think you're seeing an evolution in every city. Milwaukee is seeing development today. I think you're seeing Rockford has had quite a bit of development in that area. There's a few business parks there. So each use and each user is going to be unique. But I think what you're seeing across the United States is, in the industrial space, is almost every market that we track, which is a lot, has development going up. It has redevelopment of existing buildings. The product is getting newer, obviously, and then the demand is outpacing supply. So I think just depends on what it is that your user is looking to do. But yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And then I know one of the other things that we get asked, and is basically, call it how open, say, is Elk Grove Village with international companies coming in. We've talked a number of these pieces, but why don't you walk through some of the things you've been doing, say, Josh, with SelectChicago over the last couple of years for helping make this a welcoming and inviting place for companies to do a soft landing.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michael. Elk Grove Village has been, a steering committee member on for SelectChicago for 4 years, pretty much since its inception, I believe, or thereabouts, maybe a year or two after that. But Elk Grove, we, like I was talking with Kevin, we are open to everything. we don't say no. We don't give a hard no to people. We like to hear what their plans are, what their desires are, and try and work with them. And that is true for foreign-owned companies, which is a great example here. Brochi and Ritsu, Cosentino, those are all Screen America is a Japanese company. Those are all foreign-owned companies. We worked with Yamazon and MC Machinery when they wanted to build their corporate headquarters at Northwest Point, which I touched on off of I-90. Both those are Japanese companies. So Elk Grove really has become a destination for foreign direct investment lately. And, my job is to make that process of moving here and opening here as easy as possible. So I'm a resource for anyone who has any questions about Elk Grove Village. We maintain on our website a list of available sites and properties in the village, so someone can, on their own without me looking over their shoulder, they can go on our website and just see what's available. We have the incentives like 6B I mentioned. My colleague Nick and I work with the companies and put them in touch with any resource they may need, whether it's workforce development or permitting, or at the county or state level for state incentives. So, we really roll out the red carpet for anyone who has interest in moving or expanding in Elk Grove Village. And I think that, the only thing we can point to is that our vacancy rate is so low. It's only about 4% out of 62 million square feet. If you look to the data, I think we're doing it the right way, because people are moving here, they're staying here, they're signing, like you said, 12-year leases. So we're open. And anecdotally, I hear a lot of good things from the business community. We had a company move in here that is a Italian company that manufactures frozen pizzas, and they called me. I'm going to brag a little bit. They called me on a Friday. I took the day off, and I answered the phone, and they were surprised that their real estate broker, called me. Because he called my office and he said I was off today, but he called my cell anyways, and I answered. He's like, "Wow, I can't believe you answered on your vacation day." And when I actually met the company, he told the owner of the company, the Italian company, "This is going to work out." You know why I know this is going to work out? Because this guy answered my call on his vacation day. And it did. They moved in and they opened and they're making pizza and it's great. So, it's that kind of that white glove service. We like to call it beyond business friendly, because everyone claims to be business friendly, but we like to take it beyond that. And, answering the phone, calling people back, it sounds so basic. And whether that goes for a foreign company or a domestic company, the village is there for you. We're there to help you expand, help you move here, because we love doing it. It's we just love helping people out.
Great. Take that. And I want to thank Josh and Kevin for a wonderful presentation today. As with everything, we're going to be recording this. We're going to run it through some post-production. We had a lot of fun behind the scenes playing with some of the echo, as you can see. And Brian, why don't you pan along me a little bit? I'm going to kind of walk around a little bit so you can just see how cavernous this space is. But really, the thing I want to point out that Kevin showed us when we came in was the beautiful two-story windows that allow builders and businesses that come in here to create mezzanines and other office space. So you're really looking at a premium industrial office space here that I would never really even call your grandfather's industrial space. And so I'm going to hand this to Josh, and I'm going to say, Josh, where can they find you? Because you also have a podcast, and then I'll leave the last word for Kevin.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, so like I said, I'm available at the Village of Elk Grove. You can go to our website, www.makerswanted.org, and get my contact information. You can get my phone number and call me anytime. We do a Village podcast on a monthly basis, which can be found on iTunes under Strictly Business from Elk Grove Village. Kevin's been on the podcast. And we do a variety of different topics. We have an email newsletter that goes out to the business community. If you want to get on that distribution list, let me know. If you're in Elk Grove Village already or have a facility here, we schedule business ambassador tours where we bring out village trustees and even the mayor sometimes to visit your company and learn more about you, because we really want to build those relationships with you. So when you do have a need a year or even 10 years down the road, that you know you can call the village and get that white glove assistance. So we're here at the village and available anytime.
Well, thanks, Josh and Michael, for setting this up. I'll be brief, but if you want to learn more about our park here that we're sitting in today, visit www.elkgrovetechnologypark.com. There's contact information to learn more, to schedule tours. So I'd encourage you to visit that, as well as our company website, brennanllc.com. You can find all of our information, get in contact with any one of our offices throughout the United States, and find my contact information too. So would love to work with Josh again in another development here, but also excited to work with customers outside of Illinois as well. So thanks again for the time.
Thank you.